Gettysburg Seminary presents the Seminary Explores podcast. Conversations on faith, art, people, politics, theology, life, and more, with voices from around the corner and around the globe. Welcome to the Seminary Explores. I'm Katie Giebenhein with Seminary Ridge Review. My guest is Nick Collier, artist-in-residence at the Gettysburg National Military Park. Nick is working on photography, sculpture, and filmmaking projects during his month on the battlefield. He is a Marine Corps veteran with a BFA from George Mason University and an MFA from Florida State University. Nick, welcome to the Seminary Explores.
Hi, Katie. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
So why don't you describe the projects that you're currently working on? How's it going?
It's going well. I've been here for nearly 3 weeks already, which is kind of mind-boggling to think about because it just feels like I just got here. But that seems to be the case with everyone else that's come through here as well. The month flies by. So far, I've been working on mostly digital photography of the park and surrounding area, as well as a larger project which kind of has three different legs on it right now. To use a metaphor of a tripod, because it's actually a photography project. It's with a homemade box camera that I built, and so I've been lugging that thing around the park and shooting photos with that as well. And then I've got a couple sculptural projects that are in the works. I've been waiting for some materials to come in the mail, which have all arrived now, so that'll this weekend start that process. Okay. Some of the videography things I had in mind before I came here didn't actually come about for a number of reasons. One of which is that the basis of it was sort of centered around some drone videography, which for different legal reasons and such, you're not allowed to fly drones in the national parks, and there's bunch of different channels that would have to be cleared before that would be possible. So some of those ideas would have to be maybe put on a side burner and revisit if I come back out, hopefully for another residency. But I've been pretty busy so far.
Very good. Have you had much interaction with any of the visitors? I know we're in winter season, so there aren't nearly as many people around. But have you had any conversations with visitors yet? Or?
Not yet. No. I have an engagement with the public on the 11th of February, which is next Saturday. So that'll be my first actual planned engagement. As far as running into guests around the park, it hasn't really been something that's come up. As we were just talking about before we started, this being the down season of the area. I've been kind of fortunate in a way to have the park to myself, which is one of the benefits of coming this time of year. The downside being that I don't really see that many visitors, and so the interaction with them has been kind of limited. I will say, though, that I've had a lot of interaction, fortunately, with the park staff and some of the local people around the area. I've kind of taken it upon myself to search out certain people, and I've been really happy to find kind of a welcoming atmosphere around here. From some of the professors I've been working with over at the college, the Gettysburg College, and even a local celeb, William Frazanito, our Fraz, as he goes by, and some help with some photography research on that end. But not so much the visitors, but definitely the locals and the park staff have been incredibly helpful.
Great. It's almost a bit of a behind-the-scenes time.
Yeah, for sure.
And as we were talking about earlier, you can also really see things that are not visible in the summer because of the leaves being gone, and you can kind of see the bones of the park.
Yeah. I had a great opportunity the first week that I was here. The park set me up with one of the licensed tour guides that works in the area, and got a one-on-one. And that was pointed out several times at different points of the park while we were touring around. Things like Chamberlain's Main, the bayonet charge. Being able to see through that dense thicket of the round tops right now with all the leaves gone, and being able to actually visualize lines of men running through that area. If I was here 6 months from now, you wouldn't be able to see 30, 40 feet into the tree line. So there is that advantage for sure.
Are you well, I'm wondering what it feels like as a veteran to be in Gettysburg. Is so iconic, right, for the place here. And I was wondering, as an artist and as a veteran, if there's a way you could describe how that's influencing just your time here, or not.
It definitely is. I would say much more than the not. I just came off of another National Parks residency where 2 months ago I was in Big Bend National Park in Texas, and that was kind of the opposite end of the spectrum for me, because that was middle of nowhere, very off the grid, desert. I was fortunate to spend that time with another artist in residence, Russell James Pyle, singer-songwriter, folk musician from Albuquerque, New Mexico, which was a really great experience. You should check him out. It's Russell James Pyle on SoundCloud or on YouTube. I think he just came off an East Coast tour. But coming here and having the history and the influence of this climactic battle and this turning point in the history of the country, from the first night I got here, checking into the Klingel house where the park has me staying in the middle of the battlefield. There's a binder in there. I'm reading about the history of the house and the farmer that owned it and his family and all the things that they went through, and just what happened on that property in the first those 3 days of the battle. And I'm just like getting goosebumps. And the first night was kind of difficult to sleep. And I knew some of the history of the park prior to coming here, but every day I've learned something new, and it's really there's a connection there for me. Having served in the military and having fought in a war and having I was actually just yesterday I was given an interview with Stars and Stripes magazine, and it came up during that I was saying there's not a whole lot of difference between what happened here and for instance some of the things that happened to me when I was in Afghanistan. One of those things being, and one of the things that I've reflected on while I've been here, this town didn't ask for the battle to happen. It just logistically was perfect, kind of a culmination of everything to fall in place at one time. And for me, there's a lot of that same aspect for. There's places that I was in Afghanistan that the towns, most of those towns, they didn't ask for any kind of occupation. They've been going through it for decades. The Russians were here before us, and then the Taliban, and then we come in as hoping to kind of help as much as we can, but. In a lot of ways, we're just seen as the next occupying force, and the people that they're just trying to live their lives, and they're just kind of caught up in what happens because of the fog of war, right? The things that happen because of it, and so I think about that a lot when I'm here and I'm out in the park and I'm doing photography and exploring kind of the intricacies of the town and the history of what happened here. So there is a lot of that kind of reflection back, trying to put myself in the shoes of the guys that served here on both sides. Mm-hmm. It's kind of easy the way the park is laid out, especially to spend an entire day on the Confederate line, mm-hmm. and spend an entire day on the Union line, mm-hmm. And have that experience of being on one side or the other. And then you go through the museum at the Visitors Center, and there's such a well of information over there. And I've been fortunate enough to be able to go down into their archives and see some of the things that you wouldn't normally be able to, as a regular visitor, come here and see. Things, personal belongings of Lee's. The saddle that General Reynolds was sitting in when he was shot, which was a pivotal point in the battle here, and for a Pennsylvania son who has 4 memorials in the park. Yeah. It's definitely been influential. It's definitely helped me in directing some of the things that I was kind of uncertain before I got here of what I was going to be doing. It's starting to give me some direction on different creative ideas. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the park has been it's been really beneficial for sure. I've enjoyed my time here, and as I said, I'm sorry to see it starting to come to an end already.
I'm wondering if you can describe in a little bit more detail the box camera, because you've done other projects with this, and also you build and construct things in general, right?
Yes.
So if you could, because I think that's very interesting, and I'd like to hear more about that.
Yeah. So the box camera came about. It was when I was an undergrad at George Mason. I was in a photography class, and I don't remember the exact circumstances, but it came about in class one day that I had, when I was on patrol in Afghanistan, had a portrait photograph taken of me by a guy roadside. Over there, it's a roadside business. Okay. If you need an official document photo for a passport or an ID or something, just like you would go to a post office or Kinko's or something to mm-hmm. get a passport photo taken nowadays, except it's just, there's the hot dog stand and then there's the guy with the camera, right? Okay. So for a couple bucks, the guy will take your photo. And so I had mine taken. I brought it up in class one day and started doing some more research into the photograph, the style of photograph, the style of camera that had taken the photograph, and actually found a website called the Afghan Box Camera Project, afghanboxcamera.com, and they are trying. It's a project that's trying to preserve the history of the box camera. I think it was started in 2004, if I recall correctly, and it hosts a wide variety of photographers that use this style of camera. And it's a style of photography that's been going on in the Middle East, Afghanistan, Pakistan, especially for a century-ish. Mm-hmm. It migrated there from India, and it's called camera e-fori. If I say that correctly, which mm-hmm. is in Dari, which means instant camera, and it's basically a wooden box. It's typically made out of scrap materials that you just kind of are able to locate, mm-hmm. Which don't come by very easily over in that region of the world. You put a lens on it. And what sets it apart from other box cameras, usually a box camera will have a focusing bellows on the outside of the camera, and a box camera actually has a focusing plate on the inside of the camera. And then in addition to that, there are developing station essentially on the inside of the camera. So it's what I call, the easiest way to explain it usually is that it's a pinhole Polaroid. Because it's essentially a pinhole camera that you can focus, and then it has a dark room inside the box. So you're able to develop the photograph inside of the box, and the typical Afghan box camera will shoot a paper negative and then they'll stick that paper negative on an armature that pops up in front of the lens on the camera, and they'll reshoot the paper negative to get a paper positive. So you'll end up with two, which is the one that I brought back from Afghanistan with me. The one that I built kind of cuts out one of those steps just because of the technology that's available to me, and I shoot on a direct positive 4x5 paper. So I cut out the paper negative step, kind of speeds things up a little bit and cuts out the excess. But I too built it out of some scrap materials basically that I had. So it's a bit overbuilt in certain ways because it's built out of 3/4 inch cabinet plywood oak, so it's got a little bit of weight to it.
It's sturdy though,
it is,
right?
And it's bulletproof. It's got about 20 coats of lacquer on it. It almost looks like something that would come off of a sailing ship. It has a lot of brass, and there's just that kind of influence. I grew up sailing and have a love for the ocean, so I think I was very subconsciously kind of came about as I was putting this thing together. So when I built that camera, one of the first projects I started with that was trying to find a way to not just use it as a tool for photography, but kind of wrap it back around to its origin and my tie to Afghanistan. So I started doing portraits of student veterans at George Mason that had served in Afghanistan. And so when I went to grad school, I actually kind of set the box aside for a while. Okay. I was focusing more on my sculptural work and developing some social practice art projects. And so when the first residency I did this past summer was out in Colorado. It wasn't with the national parks. It was separate. It was through Elsewhere Studios. And that was my first kind of jump back onto the camera. I really wanted to, I proposed a project with them specifically with the camera so that I could get back on it. And it was a little bit more of a departure because I was out west doing landscape photography with the box, which it's not really purpose built for that, but it kind of took me out of my comfort zone a little, which I enjoyed. And then when I went to Big Bend back in November, I wanted to do a continuation of the student veteran photographs that I was doing earlier on, and so I proposed to the park staff there to do portraits of park staff members that are former military veterans. So it's kind of a little offshoot of that, and I'm actually continuing that here. I'm doing a shoot next week with about a dozen or so park staff members here. So I'm hoping that every park that knock on wood, that I continue with the National Park Service, every park that I go to, I can kind of build a body around that as well, and see where that goes. But while I've been here, I've been doing basically landscape photography around the park. So continuing on with what I started last summer with it. But primarily, outside of the photography, my undergrad degree and my graduate degree are both in studio art. So it's a very intentionally flexible and loose title. People ask me nowadays what it is that I do. I usually don't say photographer or sculptor. In the arts, I guess the buzzword, the keyword is interdisciplinary. At my master's program, they adopted the term media fluid, which I guess is the next big buzzword, which is kind of ambiguous. I like the media fluid, I'm one of those people that just really is I guess you could call a craftsman. I really enjoy working with my hands and building things three-dimensionally. I have a background in residential construction and remodeling, so I have, although I don't have an engineering degree, I know how things are structurally put together. I know how loads are spread across walls and different material applications, and a lot of that comes back around into the sculptures that I build.
Sure.
That influence is always there. That knowledge of different tools that I can use, and the materials and so forth and so on. So you'll definitely see that in the sculptures that I make. Most of my sculptures in undergrad were initially really more based on understanding my military service, as well as trying to come to terms with or refigure out kind of the American landscape, consumer culture in this country, at the time, the housing market had crashed. There was a lot of turbulence, financial turbulence in this country when I was at George Mason. So I was really influenced by that a lot. And then when I was in grad school, as I said, I kind of was still focused on that, but I took the opportunity while I was there, or tried to take the opportunity while I was there, to kind of step away from making work that was so, I don't want to say pointed or specific, I guess, to my military experience. So you'll kind of see, if you go on my website, you'll see kind of a little bit of a divergence from what I was making undergrad and what I was doing in grad school. I was also got more kind of involved with social practice art, which is really more about kind of placemaking and the social sphere of art and how its influence can help communities in different ways. One of the things I was not only stepped away from the camera during grad school, but as I said, there was a time when I was kind of worried that I was going to get stuck or kind of pigeonholed into being that artist that's a vet that does work about military stuff, and so that kind of, in a way, frightened me that that's the direction I was heading. So as I said, I made that conscious step to go in the opposite direction for a minute. But then afterwards, and now especially with these residencies that I've been doing with the national parks, I've kind of figured out a way to embrace it, but not let it rule all the work that I'm doing. So I've kind of found a happy middle ground, so to say. But yeah.
Very good. And I also would like to know, I know this might be putting you sort of on the spot, and I don't know if you're asked this very, very frequently or not, but what's an example of one thing that you would like to say to people in the U.S. who have not served, who have not had a connection to any of the armed services, and I'm saying this as someone who has lived in another country and then came back to the U.S. in different circumstances, but this re-entry thing, I think people really underestimate it if they haven't been through it themselves. So part of that is coming from this direction, and also just because I'm just curious, since you are here in Gettysburg, and some of these parts of your identity are going to be surfacing in a different way because of the site. Is there something that you would like to just touch on or say, to people for whom that is really a completely foreign experience, and that they only read about it and see it on the news? And
I guess I kind of understand your question. It's what do I want to say to them? I thank everyone that I see who thanks me for my service, right? I really appreciate that, because I know I've been fortunate to be part of a generation of the military of this country that has seen a tremendous amount of support. The guys that came, that was kind of the same way like the World War II Greatest Generation had the support of the country. It's completely, it was a different scenario, but I'm definitely appreciative of it. Unlike those guys, for instance, that the Vietnam era, that was came back and was hated, and tested, and spit on, and cursed at, and all these things, and I think the country, as this this post 9/11 battlefront has come about, the country's really made strides as a whole to make sure that they didn't do that again to their service members. And there's hiccups here and there, and there was issues with the VA, for instance. When I first joined the military, when I got out, you always heard such a bad rap about those guys, and fortunately I haven't had any bad experiences with them. They've I go for my annual physical, and I always am able to get an appointment, and I haven't really had any major issues. And I'm not speaking for everybody, because I know that it does still happen here and there. But they've definitely made huge strides to keep from that happening again. Kind of going back to your question, I would say to those who don't have any military connection, family member experience themselves, it's especially if you haven't traveled outside of this country. I think it's very easy as Americans to, and it's unfortunately happening more and more within the past few weeks. It's really easy to become guarded and sheltered and hidden behind the freedoms that we have here, the borders and so forth and so on. And if you, I'm still one of those people that bleeds red, white, and blue, and I'm a true patriot, and I've given a portion of my life to defend this country. But the reality of it is, there's a majority of the places that you travel in this world outside of the United States, you're going to find that our view by everybody else is not really what you think it is. There's a lot of places in this world that love Americans and love our way of life and love the things that we do for defending other countries' freedoms and everything, but there's a lot of places out there that don't like us, and they'll tell you. And there's some places that might actually surprise you that'll do that. So keep that. Be mindful of that. That's one of those things that when you travel around the world, you have to. I think I'm trying to word this in a way that doesn't put everyone in the same grouping. You're an ambassador, right? Yeah. You're a part of the face of the United States, so kind of act accordingly. But when you see service members, definitely thank them for their service. I think that goes a long way. People really do appreciate it. It doesn't get old, they don't get tired of hearing it, it does help. But also, don't be. I think sometimes people can be. Sometimes can be a little overzealous about it, but they can also be afraid to approach service members or to there's a certain ground you can definitely talk with them on, approach them, tell them thank you, but don't go in. I've had some experiences where people are like, oh, tell me about every single thing you did over there. Tell me about how many people you killed. Tell me about all the. They want to hear all the worst aspects of it. And that's where it's really, I just kind of have to say, you know, I appreciate you thanking me, and then turn and walk the other direction. So, you know, there's some things that are definitely off limits, and be careful and to not tread too far into that direction. I think the easiest thing is just, it's a simple, you know, if you notice somebody that's has some kind of identifier on them, you know, the veteran hat or, you know, T-shirt that says they served or something, and you notice that, definitely go over, you know, shake their hand, thank them for their service, and I think that's plenty. You know, that's exactly what needs to be done, and that nothing more. You know, buy us a beer or something, but that's about the extent of it. And just be mindful of if you're traveling throughout the world, that you represent all the rest of us, and you know, act accordingly, and remember that although we are one of the greatest nations in the world, we're not always the top dog, and we're not always seen that way. So, you know,
and it's a big world.
Yeah, it's a big world.
A bigger world we forget.
There's a lot of places out there, you know, and I've seen a lot, but I haven't seen all of them.
Well, thank you so much for your time today.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
You've been listening to The Seminary Explores. I'm Katie Giedenhain with Seminary Ridge Review. My guest is artist Nick Collier. Visit his website and learn more about his work at www.nickcollier.com. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Katie.
You have been listening to The Seminary Explores from historic Seminary Ridge in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, a production of Gettysburg Seminary. We invite you to visit our website at www.ltsg.edu. Opinions expressed on this program are not necessarily those of Gettysburg Seminary or the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America.